I mean, I grew up a daughter of a union pipe fitter welder. And my mom, she just retired from Dubuque Community School District in February. And mind you, when she decided to retire, I thought it was because my sister had a baby about a year and a half ago, and he is very, very cute. So I thought she just wanted to spend more time with Jordy. And instead, she looked at me and she said, "No, Abby, I decided to retire because she had just turned 62. And she was worried that if she didn't retire and take her Social Security at the age of 62, that they were going to change the age that she could retire and get her Social Security." And I looked at her and I said, "Mom, this is why I'm running for Congress." Because there are folks just like my mom, all across this state and all across this country, living with that anxiety every single day. And you know, the rest of my family, there were 4 of us. We were all first-generation college graduates, still paying off student loans, as I'm sure some of you might be too, right? Or will be. So not always easy. And I still remember being a 10-year-old, having to have my dad's business agent's name memorized, because you guys remember caller ID, right? The little white boxes? When that name showed up on caller ID, that meant my dad had to get that phone call, because that meant my dad had a job. And I remember sometimes those months, and well, years, where that name wasn't showing up very often, and what that meant for my family. So again, not always easy. But at the end of the day, I grew up in a state and in a country where we were promised, if you work hard, you can make it. Again, that is what we were told, and that is what we were promised. And unfortunately, I mean, that's becoming nearly impossible for folks, and it's because of the policies being pushed by that Freedom Caucus member we have representing us right now, Rod Blum. And speaking of Rod Blum, he and I actually got elected the exact same time in 2014. So that's when I became a state representative, and that's when he became our congressman. But I assure you, that night is where our similarities end. Because he has spent the last 4 years in Washington, D.C., becoming the picture of obstruction and corruption. And I don't just say that because it rhymes. But truly, being part of that Freedom Caucus, their whole goal is to put politics over policy, to stop all the good stuff that we're trying to get done. And then, well, the corruption. If you've been following the news lately, you know, I gotta say, there's not many things that the U.S. House can agree to do bipartisanly anymore, but at least they agreed to investigate him over whatever he has done. It's very, very frustrating to get to see that coming from our representatives, and we know we have to make sure that we have somebody who is looking out for the folks here, not corporate special interest. And you know, in contrast to what Rod's been up to the last 4 years, we've been right here in the state of Iowa, fighting hard and stepping up for working families, for public education, for our wages, for women in our health care. And I tell you what, you name it, I mean, the GOP has gone after it in the state of Iowa. And the big thing is, I haven't just been a vote against these attacks. I have been a voice every single time. So that's also why I'm running for Congress. Because I think it's about time we send this voice to Washington, D.C. and make sure they remember all the folks here in this district and across this country that they have clearly forgotten. And I gotta say, when I decided to do this, there were a lot of folks who said this could not be done. There is no way that a 28-year-old who's still paying off student loans, who has no money of her own to put into this, and by the way, I am 29 now, so I will take all the years I can get. But I was 28 at the time, and could take on a guy who could fully fund his campaign if he wanted. And they also looked at me and said, we don't know that Democrats can win in Iowa anymore. We sure don't think a Democratic woman can win in Iowa. And I looked at them and I said, you're wrong. I don't know why yet you're wrong, but you're wrong. And within the first couple of months and getting out there and talking to folks, I realized very, very quickly that 2018 wasn't going to come down to where you lived, whether it was urban or rural Iowa, or whether you were a Democrat or a Republican or whatever party you are. 2018 was going to come down to our values. And who are we? Are we people that step up for our neighbors, or are we not? And the Iowa that I grew up in, when my mom called the neighbor and said, we need help, they were down there in 2 minutes. That is just what you do. That is who we are. And it's because of these conversations that I've been having with folks, many of you actually right here today, that I have so much hope. And see, that's the other thing, hope. You remember, we used to talk a lot about hope back in 2008, or as I like to call it, the good old days. And I think it's about time we start talking about hope again. Because what I've also realized, and very specifically just the last few months, we are not a state or a country that grows from fear and division. We grow from hope. Hope is why you get up in the morning, you work hard, and you hope not just to be able to make a living, but to be able to have a good life. And it's about hope right now and the idea that your kids can get a good public education and do better than you did. And it's about hope that, God forbid, you get sick, you don't have to file for bankruptcy. And it's also about hope if you are like my sister and brother-in-law, who are corn and soybean farmers, who have that 1.5 year cute little guy I talked about earlier, that you can work hard, pass your farm onto that next generation, and not be waking up every single morning right now worried about your future because of a trade war that this administration decided to start on Twitter. And it's about all the hopes that every single one of you have. Have for your grandkids, have for your futures, have for your kids, have for your parents. We all have a reason that we showed up here today. We all have a reason that we're making phone calls, knocking on doors, doing everything that we can, and it is personal to every single one of us. It's what's on the line and on the ballot. And we cannot take a day for granted. I think, is it 58 days now, Julianne? Yeah, 58 days. That's what it is. That's when we get to cast our vote. Well, you can actually early, and that's soon as well. Someone else will tell you that number. We can cast our vote for hope, for change, again, for common sense, for decency. Again, that's what's on the line and on the ballot and why we can't take a day for granted. I gotta tell you, it means the world for me to be here and get to see all of you all today. And I also just have to say thank you. Because all those folks who thought it couldn't be done, that Democrats couldn't win in Iowa again, well, we have now made Rod Blum the #1 most vulnerable incumbent in the country. One of you. It's because of the folks I've talked to all across this district, the ones who are coming out on gorgeous Sunday afternoons to make phone calls, to knock on doors, to talk to their neighbors who voted the other way, talk to their neighbors who didn't even vote at all last time. And that's how we're going to do this. So again, I promise you, I will keep working my tail off. I just ask you continue to do the same and double down, because when we do this, when we work hard, we get to take back our state, our country. Thank you, everybody.
Go Abby! Thank you also for me for being here today, and on behalf of the party, we are excited to get headquarters up and going and to have lots of opportunities